You see, I hopped off the Wi-Fi. I was having some issues. Being a little spotty. Hey, Hunter. So everyone that's joining, this is the weekly Tech Sales Wednesday evening TikTok Live, sponsored by RepView. RepView, for people that don't know, they're sponsoring this specific live, but they're like Glassdoor, but for tech sales compensation data. So this is top paying sales organizations for enterprise reps. They break down this data for SDRs, SMB, mid-market, enterprise. So enterprise, that's the big boys, biggest accounts, biggest deals. Typically it's around 250, 300K OTE, and then of course we're in sales to make a lot of money. So when you exceed your quotas, you get accelerators, you make additional commission, and you can see these are what like the top reps have reported earning in a year at these companies. So great resource when you're trying to like figure out if the offer is good. Sometimes companies will offer you like a really high OTE, but the quotas are unrealistic, so not many people hit it. So they tell you like percentage of reps that hit quota and all that stuff. So thoughts on Samsara? A few people have told me about Samsara. I think they're doing a lot of recruiting right now. I didn't see any red flags, so seems pretty solid. Jacob just landed a managed service specialist role. Congrats, man. Can't afford boot camps, but you're in sales. How do you get into tech sales? Yeah, you definitely don't need to do a boot camp. I always recommend people to go ahead and try for a few weeks, even like 2 months to see if they could get a position. So look at my playlist, Get Into Tech Sales. Got like a bunch of steps. A bunch of people have like gone through, they've messaged me, told me that they've gone through those specific steps and they've landed SDR positions. So go ahead and try that first. But also to note too, most of the boot camps, they don't charge anything up front. They do an income share agreement, so you pay after the fact, after you get a job. So that kind of helps too. You don't have to worry about paying anything up front. DJ Odyssey, thanks for joining. Thoughts on Gartner? Gartner's interesting. I don't really classify them as tech sales because they're more of like an analyst company. They basically review all of the other tech and software companies, and they provide analysis reports to business owners, leaders at other big companies that are trying to decide what software to buy. How many reps are at these companies? 20, 30, 40, etc. I mean, it ranges. So, for example, I don't know, like MongoDB, I think they have like 200 reps or something like that. So it can range quite a bit. Datadog's a good one. I think I don't think they're IPO yet, but they're one of like the hotly anticipated ones. Do you need a degree or anything to land these jobs? No, you don't. If you're looking for the sales development representative position, that's the entry level role. People get that position without having any prior experience. So you learn pretty much everything on the job. Thoughts on Aspireship? It's another interesting program that I've seen. I haven't specifically talked to like the people that are running that program, like I have with like Pre-Hired, Pre-Sales Academy. I've messaged those. I've talked with those leaders and vetted out those programs. But at first glance, Aspireship looks solid. How many years was I in CMM until enterprise role? So I started off as an SDR on the sales side. I was an SDR for 10 months. Then I moved into inside sales in a closing role. It was about 14 months. Then I went to a cybersecurity startup as a sales engineer. I was there for like a year and a half. I went to Google, another year and a half there. Another startup as a sales engineer was 10 months before they laid off half the company, including me. And then now I've been at Amazon. So I've been at enterprise basically from the first startup that I was in. So I guess it was about a little over 2 years to get to enterprise. But that was as a sales engineer, and then I went to the sales side. Any thoughts on Barracuda Networks? How's the TRX been? The TRX has been great. I don't even have 100 miles on it yet, but I don't really like baby it when I break in the truck, so it's fun. It's huge though. It's like pretty hard to drive around Chicago, especially in my parking garage. It like barely fits in like the garage doors. So I'm gonna be selling it when the title comes in. Thoughts on investment banking? Investment banking, it's a whole different world. You can make a lot of money in that too. The big difference is, from what I've heard, I have some colleagues that are in it. You work like 70, 80-hour weeks, even longer. So it's definitely like a big grind. But if you stick at it, within like 5, 7, 8 years, if you can get to like the managing director level, you can make a lot of money in investment banking. But you continue to work a lot of hours from what I've heard. Like it drops down from that, but it's kind of the trade-off. Hello, fellow enterprise techie. Thanks for joining. What percentage of hires from these companies are from referrals? You work in tech sales? I don't know the exact percentage, but what I've seen is I think like your likelihood of getting an interview is like 3 to 4x higher with a referral versus without a referral. So the referral definitely makes like a big difference. Mainly from like the initial filter. Like you still have to be a good candidate, but what the referral does is it kind of gets you past that initial filter. Like sometimes like recruiters are using like they're only like glancing your resumes really quickly. They're looking for like a very specific background, and then if it's not like a complete match, they just reject your resume completely. But if you have a referral, referrals are almost like a replacement of what cover letters used to be. They can provide like a bit more color into your background. Someone's like vouching for you. So it basically gets you past that initial recruiter screen. You still have to perform very well in all the interviews and everything. Are these companies mainly based off of cold calls or direct sales? Both cold calls and direct sales. So when you start off as a sales development representative, you're doing a mix of like cold calling, cold emailing, but then you're also qualifying inbound leads, so customers that are reaching out or attending webinars. And then when you move into these roles, typically a lot of like the high-paying roles, they're focused on greenfield accounts, net new. So you're getting paid on bringing in new customers. So a lot of that is prospecting, cold calling, but you're also like leveraging like relationships, getting referrals in. So it's pretty different than like, let's say like insurance sales or car sales or something like that, where that's like can be really cold calling, I guess. How many hours a week do I work? It ranges. I'm doing like a lot of stuff on the side, so sometimes it's like up to like 60 hours now. But from like the main job, you can like do the main job. I would say, if you're efficient with your time, you could do it in a 40-hour work week. How long SDR until AE promotion? Typically 12 to 18 months. That's about how long it takes to get promoted from an SDR to an AE. If you're a high performer, it could be a little bit sooner, but don't bank on getting promoted in less than 12 months. Favorite prospecting tools? I use LinkedIn a lot. That's the main thing I use. LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That's my main thing. I don't do like a ton of like cold calling anymore because I only have like 2 big accounts that I manage, so it's not like a high volume type of deal. Can you sell during off hours as 9 to 5? Yeah, you can. I mean, you can still like write emails. You can still work on presentations off hours, but in general, you're not really going to expect customers to respond outside of 9 to 5. Just started an A1 company valued at 2.1 billion. If they IPO, would that benefit you? Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends on how much they're going to grow, but 2 billion is still like a relatively small valuation. So let's say if they hit 20 billion in valuation, you can expect your equity to 10x basically in that case. Do you work off of scripts? Or are you basically memorizing a pitch when you're reaching out to the customer? Yeah, usually as an SDR, they're going to give you like scripts, messaging. Ideally, you're going to tailor the messaging a bit for like your specific customer, so you're not just like using the same generic messaging for everyone. But for the most part, you're going to get a lot of like support there. Definitely try to get referred into these companies fastest way to get an interview. Yep, referrals are super important. Like they actually even like compensate employees for referring candidates that actually, and you get like a bonus if you get placed. And it's like a small bonus, but they place a lot of weight on the referrals, and that you can see that with the fact that they pay a bonus. Do you need programming language? Does it help to know a language to be an AE? Actually, like my first professional job, I learned LabVIEW, so it was a graphical programming language. And then I did a little bit of like JavaScript, but not really. I didn't get like too heavy into coding or anything. I initially thought I wanted to get into software development, but it didn't really capture my attention, or I just kind of, if I could go back maybe like 8 years, I would have tried a bit harder into software development, because software developers make like crazy money too. Top 5 tech companies to apply for? I would say Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Those are like the top 3 for me, especially like within cloud. Cloud is like a super high growth industry right now. And then also cybersecurity. And then after that, it's going to really kind of depend on what specific industry you want to focus on. I don't know if there's like a specific top 5, but for like your first role, what I typically recommend is like a bigger, more established company that has like, because what you're looking for out of the first role is to get a good amount of like training and mentorship. And sometimes when you join like a small startup as like one of the first sales reps, you're expected to come in hitting the ground running. And it's great if you're an experienced seller, but if you're a new seller, you want to be building those foundational skills, and it's typically easier to do that at a bigger company. Any advice for someone for inside sales at Caterpillar to break into tech sales? Yeah, so I get a lot of people that ask me about, how can they transition from doing sales in a different field and go to tech sales. So really what you want to do is you want to hone in on the type of companies that you're applying for. So construction, for example, think about like the type of customers that you're selling to, and then also think about like the type of software that they'll be using. So there's countless tech companies, for example, that are developing software for construction companies. So those would be good types of companies to go ahead and target, because then you could leverage your prior experience. You're not just starting from scratch. So go ahead and do that, and then spend a good amount of time like networking on LinkedIn. Reach out directly to the hiring managers. Try to get referrals from other AEs, and then that way you can like really sell yourself and explain like why you're interested in being in tech sales, why that specific company. You hit your number for AE promotion in December. Should you be more vocal about getting what you want? Absolutely. You need to own your promotion. So don't just wait around to get promoted. You got to ask very specifically and let them know that you do want to get promoted quickly. Ask, what do I need to demonstrate to show that I'm ready to get promoted? You're basically going to be building your own promo doc yourself, and then hold your manager accountable to that. Transitioning from on-prem to cloud. What's the question there? Yes, a lot of companies are transitioning from on-prem to cloud, mainly just because most companies aren't in the business of running their own data centers. It's a cost center for them. So in most cases, it makes more sense when you look at total cost of ownership to move to the cloud and then focus their resources, their limited IT resources. Like engineering resources are super restrictive nowadays, just in terms of hiring and then keeping people on. So it's best to utilize those engineers that you have on developing actual products and not just like running your infrastructure. What's my thought on fintech AE? The last startup that I was at was a fintech. We did machine learning for credit underwriting. Super lucrative, I think. There's a lot of attention within the fintech space. The one thing that I don't really like, that I didn't like about fintech, was that a lot of like the banks and the credit unions, they have a lot of like technical debt and they move pretty slowly in my experience. So that's kind of like the one trade-off there. And also because it is fairly regulated, deals can take a bit longer to close. Clouds around physical infrastructure. Yep, they do. I mean, it's, the data centers are still there, but instead of like running it, yourself, you're outsourcing it. And cloud is one of those things where economy of scales come into play. So as you can imagine, it's a lot cheaper for one company to be running, millions of servers versus a smaller company running their own set of like, 100 or 200 servers or whatever. Thoughts on AE at Google? Pretty solid. They've been investing a lot in their sales organization. I'm pretty bullish on it. They're investing a lot in cloud, and you can see that when they put out their notices saying that they're going to be divesting from ads and then implementing more like user privacy. So I think what that means is you're going to see even more investment in cloud. Thoughts on Snowflake? Snowflake's solid. I have a colleague that works there. He joined like a year before they went IPO as like an individual contributor, low-level sales engineer, and then now he has like $5 million of options there because they went big. But yeah, I'm bullish on Snowflake. How do you feel about an enterprise base being 105 but OTE being 250? I'm a fan of like having a lower base and then having a higher commission. So most times it's like a 50-50 split. But 40-60, for example, in my opinion, is preferable because then you just get even more upside if you exceed your quota. And then 250 OTE is pretty typical for enterprise. Rapid7, nice. Yeah, Rapid. Actually, it's funny. I had an offer at Rapid7 like years ago. Almost joined them as a sales engineer. Ended up joining a different cybersecurity startup, but they're doing extremely well. Have you heard of intern tech sales making commission? So usually not. Even as like an SDR, the entry level role, you don't usually make a commission. What they do is they pay you a bonus, and the bonus is based typically on opportunities that you're generating, and it's not based on the deals actually closing themselves because you're not closing the deals. You're passing it on to account executives that are closing the deals. So it's usually not fair to you to have your bonus or commission be based on things that are out of your control. So they usually base it on just the leads that are converted to opportunities. Have you ever heard of Entrada? Yeah, Entrada isn't that the company that does it manages like stock options for startup employees? Actually used them at the last startup that I was at. I've heard they're growing extremely fast too, just because a lot of companies are looking to like revamp the management of stock options for their employees. So Entrada is like, I think, the leader within that space. Thoughts on Oracle? Oracle's great. I mean, they're kind of like an old giant. They're the leader or the pioneer of enterprise sales, SaaS sales. Customers sometimes don't like Oracle because they have a reputation of aggressively auditing customers for renewals on their licenses. But that said, the sales organization I think is top notch. Like if you join as like a SDR, BDR, or even as an AE, you're going to get an incredible amount of training. You're going to learn a lot, and then having that name on your resume is going to carry a lot of weight too. What kind of job do I have? I am an account manager at AWS. Is 150K a good place to start in tech sales? Yeah, that's pretty good. Usually, as an SDR, the entry level role, you're going to be getting paid 60 to 100K OTE. 150K, I'm assuming they gave you an offer as an account executive and you have prior sales experience. What happens if you miss quota as an SDR? So if you miss quota as an SDR, you'll get a lower bonus. Your bonus is proportional to your progress towards quota. So if you only hit 75% of your quota, your bonus is only going to be 75% of what was promised to you in your sales plan. And typically you won't get fired unless like you consistently fail to meet quota and you're not putting in the work. So when you don't hit quota, what they're going to do is they're going to start looking at your specific activity metrics. It's one thing to not hit quota if you're still doing 60 calls a day or whatever the goal is, versus not hitting quota and only doing like a quarter of the work that you should be doing. So go ahead and look at that. As long as you're putting in the activity, usually you're not really going to get dinged for that. But if you consistently fail to meet quota, there might be some underlying issues, and they'll want to address those. And then if you don't meet quota for like 4 quarters in a row without any good reason or explanation, then you might get placed on a performance improvement plan or fired. What's the transition period from an AE to a strategic lead? It depends on the company. Usually that will be like a level jump. So typically the bigger companies, it's about like 2 years to get promoted between levels. Thoughts on joining AWS? Tips on joining AWS from selling on-prem storage? Yeah, tip is go ahead and get a referral. I've referred a good number of people at AWS. If you want a referral, happy to do that for you. BDR versus SDR. So usually those two roles, those titles are interchangeable. You'll see business development representative, sales development representative. Very rarely will you have both of those titles at the same company. So it's pretty much the entry-level role. Sometimes what they'll do, if you do see both at the same company, like one is for inbound and one is for outbound. So like outbound would be like the cold calling role. Inbound would be qualifying customers that are calling in directly. So yeah, both I think equal roles. Where do you see your total compensation being in 5 to 10 years? So if assuming I still stay at like big tech companies, your total compensation only goes up. So I'm at about like 350 total comp, and then obviously you get more stock as you stay on, you get promoted. So I'd say, within, 5 to 10 years, easily be, it also depends on inflation too, but I could see myself, let's say within 5 years, being at like 700K total comp, base, commission, stock. Move your head down. You want to see what they say about Samsara. I don't know if Samsara is on this list there. Am I generating my own leads? What does that process look like? Yes, I'm generating my own leads right now. I basically work with like the executives and the directors, align on their business objectives, and they tell me who's going to be running the project, and then I work with them. How long until you leave to go to another FANG? Planning to keep hopping for 10 years. I don't know if I would say early on, let's say like within like the first 5-10 years of your career, it's definitely okay to like move around a bit from company to company. But I would say like once you get close to like the 10 years of experience mark, you really should kind of like hone in on like a specific company or a role that you really want to excel at, because you're going to get to a point where job hopping isn't going to increase your pay substantially, if at all. And the way that you're going to make more money is by moving up the corporate ladder. So you need to find a role that's going to allow you to make a big impact, that's going to give you the exposure needed to get promoted to these higher level roles like director and higher level roles, for example. How do you feel about customer success tech jobs? Super important. Customer success is like on the post-sale side, crucial role. I respect it. You're not going to make as much because there's you're not getting a commission. Typically, it's more of like a bonus, but it's more of a stable role. I would say you don't have as like quota pressure. Thoughts on the 20-1 split? Yeah, Amazon announced. I read that they announced a 20-1 stock split. So obviously, stock splits don't really change the fundamentals of the stock itself, but there is like this psychological factor where once stock prices get like to a certain point, like Amazon was like almost at, I think, at 4,000. Once it gets to a point that it kind of like hits this barrier where people just feel like it's too expensive. That's why like Apple's done like a good number of stock splits. So I guess I'm feeling pretty bullish about it because Amazon hasn't done a stock split in a long time. People were saying that it wouldn't. I was hoping that they would, especially with like Google announcing their stock split. So I think it's going to be a good time to invest because their stock's been pretty flat, I would say, over the past like year and a half, even though revenue and everything is up. Tips on generating your own leads. Yeah, so I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator quite a bit. So there's like a ton of great training, free training, in terms of like how you can effectively utilize LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I think they even have their own training themselves hosted on LinkedIn. So go ahead and check them out on. I think they have it hosted on Coursera. But best practice really would be you need to really understand like who the buyer is and who the target customer is, so that way you're not like wasting your time reaching out to prospects that aren't going to be a good fit at all. So spend a good amount of time even just like building out your prospect lists before you even start your campaigns, because I've seen people like waste a lot of cycles, and they feel like they're putting in the effort, but they're just not targeting the right folks. Can you talk about RSU amounts when starting at a new company? Yeah, so at pretty much most of the tech companies, they're going to give you an initial stock grant, either options if they're not publicly traded, or they'll give you stock units if they are. And it's going to vary based on your level. It can vary quite a bit. For example, when I was at Google, when I started pretty low level, level 3, they gave me 160 shares of Google vesting over 4 years. So pretty substantial at the time. Like Google stock was like $1,000 a share. And but I had other colleagues that had a little bit less experience than me. They started at the same level, but one of them, I remember, he only got like 20,000 or 20 shares, so $20,000 worth of shares. So quite a big difference. So it's going to vary pretty much based on your level and experience, and you can negotiate that too. Internet, Deloitte, PwC, EW, JP Morgan, left school, no degree, for personal reasons. Advice on career path. Yeah, so I mean that experience is great. The career advice on the career path would definitely be to target the sales development representative, business development representative position. So you don't need a degree for that specific role. Try to get referrals. Referrals will go a long way, especially without a degree. And then that background is great with your internships. What I would do is I would find a list of, generate a list of like 10 to 20 companies that you really want to work for that have openings, and then use LinkedIn to find people who used to work at like Deloitte and PwC that do work at those target companies. Chances are there are going to be people that have that shared background, and use that as like as a hook or bridge to build a connection and then ultimately get a referral. What do I do with my large commission checks? Invest, real estate. Yeah, I do. I invest in the stock market. I'm starting to do angel investing in startups, and then real estate too. Do I work from home? I do work from home pretty much most of the time. Work from home, and then occasionally travel out to customers. Like next week, I'm going to be in Seattle all week, and then randomly come in the office. Cybersecurity seller here from Microsoft can confirm. Tom is no cap. Money, yep. Money is awesome. I mean, I don't blame people. It's one of those things where like it's hard to believe the numbers until you actually see it. Just because like when you look at places on Glassdoor, they do report like way lower numbers. So like unless you're actually like in the tech industry, it can be hard to believe that you can be making like surgeon money, for example, without having to get like a doctorate degree or like big law money, for example, without having to go to law school. Advice for getting through the loop in the AWS interview process. Yeah, the big advice really is know those leadership principles like the back of your hand. I say have two examples, personal examples, for ways that you've demonstrated the different leadership principles across your career. And then have like a little like cheat sheet reference list that you can reference during the interview, and don't reuse examples. That's probably like the biggest thing. There's a ton of great like YouTube videos that go through like the loop prep, but that single thing alone will is basically like 95% of what you need to do to get past it. Thoughts on EdTech? You've heard there's some in Chicago. Yeah, sorry guys, there's like a ton of comments. So like what I do is I basically just read the comments that come down. I used to like scroll through and read all of them, but then it'd start to lag. So now I'm just reading what basically pops up. So thoughts on EdTech? EdTech is great. Companies are investing a lot in terms of up-leveling and training their own employees. So I'm a big fan of EdTech. Like I got my MBA through University of Illinois, and they partner with Coursera. So I've seen firsthand kind of the power of EdTech. I think it's the future. I think a lot of colleges, and we saw that during COVID too, right? Going to remote learning. I think it's only going to grow from this point. Any interesting startups that you consider working for? Yeah, there's a number of them, but for me to join another startup again, I'd be pretty specific in terms of joining like at like a Series A or Series B. Not really too interested in joining it like Series D or later, just because you don't have as much upside. So like the ones that I would join. That honestly changes quite a bit, just because there's so many startups that are cropping up, and then they move through funding rounds fairly quickly. What path to take after becoming a BDR? So the most direct path after a BDR is to become an account executive. So sometimes they might have inside sales representatives, so you'll do that, and then you'll become an account executive. That's like the most direct path. What would you suggest out of college? Google account strategist, ad sales, or BDR at Adobe? I would probably do Google. So even though that one's not on the cloud side, like in my opinion, cloud is preferable to ad sales, because ad sales, it's kind of like it's a questionable field just in terms of all the privacy stuff that's happening, that's making ad sales more difficult. But I will say, like, if you join Google, Google's one of those places where they're hiring you as like a fit for future roles, not just the current role. So don't look at like that role as like the end all be all. Most likely you're going to get promoted or change jobs within like 2 years at Google. So from a company perspective, I think working at Google is preferable to Adobe. So assuming like the pay is similar between the two, I probably would lean towards the Google role. Oh, hey Ben, thanks for hopping on. Glad to see you there. Oops, spilled something. Is Salesforce a good CRM? Yeah, it's basically like the leader, the main CRM. Most of like the big companies will use Salesforce. So why is Google so great to work at? I think it's mainly just because of like the benefits that they have. Um, in my experience, I think it's better to work at as an engineer versus on the sales side. They're a very engineering focused company. But traditionally, it was always a great place to work because like they paid top of market, fast growing company. But now I think there's a lot of other companies that are similar or even more preferable. Like I remember even my manager at Google directly told me, you don't go to Google to make a lot of money. If you want to make a lot of money, you join like a fast growing startup, for example. Google kind of has the reputation of being like a place where people come to rest and vest, as they say. Your resumes are getting smoked right now for AE. Think you're going to have to do SDR. Yeah, if you don't have prior tech sales experience, it's pretty hard to get hired as an AE because they're going to be looking for closing experience within tech. So starting off as an SDR isn't like the worst if it's a step backwards. Like especially if you have prior sales experience, you probably can get promoted fairly quickly. Within like 12 to 18 months. And like you can think of the SDR role as a good way to build reinforce those foundational skills, so it'll make you a stronger AE. Enterprise AE, Salesforce, 210K OTE. Your market rate is 300K, but your W2 500K last 2 years. Should you leave? Yeah. So the question of like when to leave a company, right? Never an easy answer. Basically, what you need to do is, if you don't have like another offer that you're considering, I don't know. I don't think you should ever like leave a job without having another job lined up. And so I mean, typically what you do is you get another job offer in hand, and then you have to kind of compare what's the career trajectory going to be look like if you stay at your current company versus leaving. Because if you started a new company, you're basically starting from scratch, from promotion cycles and everything like that. So if you're an enterprise AE at Salesforce, and let's say you're close to getting promoted to that next level, that's going to be a bump up in pay. So that's one of those like kind of things you need to calculate. You also need to think about like what's the relationship with your sales manager. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. So I think having like a strong supportive sales manager is pretty valuable. It's probably even more valuable than like a job that might offer higher pay, because you could run into a position where you just don't do as well at the new company for one reason or another. So you can't just look at like just the enterprise AE. JK about being Bren, bro. Thanks for the help. I wouldn't be surprised. He does know that I'm on here. SDR at Splunk, thoughts. Splunk is solid, so I think it'd be a great place to join. It's a great place to be when you're looking at also positions for like joining as an SDR. You got to think about like, would you want to be an AE there? So if it's a top-rated company for AEs, a good company to get in as an SDR, because typically it's easier to get in an SDR and get promoted up. Do I have a financial advisor? No, I basically manage my investments myself. I've had a few reach out to me, but I don't think I get a lot of value from a financial advisor. What does SDR stand for? Sales Development Representative. What's an AE? AE is Account Executive. Thoughts on IBM in the industry comparatively to AWS, Azure, GCP? Definitely like a step lower than the three of them. I mean, you could look at Gartner. So Gartner basically ranks them. You have AWS, clear leader, and then you have Azure, and then GCP, and then all the other ones are like pretty significantly lower, including IBM. IBM is catching up. They're trying to catch up within the cloud space. They kind of have a late start. They've been trying to hire like crazy for the past like couple years, trying to get caught up. So AWS sales manager asked me to do a 30, 60, 90 mock deck. You haven't done a mock. Any advice? Yeah, there's a ton of great 30, 60, 90-day examples. I've done that in prior interviews. I didn't do it for AWS, but I think it's a great exercise just to show what you plan on doing within the role. You're as a med school dropout, turned six-figure tech sales rep too. Awesome, man. Yeah, I've had quite a few people from the medical industry that have either decided not to go to med school or switched into tech because they got burned out within medicine. Do you have a preference between infrastructure as a service versus SaaS sales? They have their pros and cons. With SaaS, what's nice is you get paid when you close deals, and cloud you get paid when customers spend on the platform. So sometimes it can what happens is in cloud sales you don't have like the same end of quarter push or end of quarter rush, but on the other hand, if you have like a gap to your quota, you can't really wait for things to close at the end of the quarter because it's not really going to move the needle much in terms of consumption. Has AWS ever hired anybody with no degree? Yep, they have. What's an ISR versus AE? ISR is an inside sales representative. AE, account executive. So they're both usually closing roles. The responsibilities can change a bit from companies. Sometimes the ISRs are not actually closing deals, but a lot of times they are. The main distinction is inside sales is typically not supposed to be traveling out to customers. Account executives would be in like the field. Inside sales representatives could be supporting multiple customers. They could have a bigger territory. What's the average enterprise AE base at AWS? So they have, everyone knows about like the 160K base cap at AWS. So most of the enterprise AEs, you're like a level 5 or level 6, and you're pretty close to that cap. Do you ever need a bachelor's degree? No, you don't need a bachelor's degree. Interviewed for AWS sales internship on Monday. Why are they so emotionless and love the LPs? I think it's mainly just because they interview so many people, and at big tech companies, they try to make the interviews as objective as possible. So because of that, like there's almost like a rubric that they're kind of like grading you on. And what that means is sometimes like the interviews can feel, like emotionless, I guess, but it's really just a result of that. They're really trying to like assess you on your actual skills and not just like your speaking abilities, for example. If you were breaking in tech right now for SDR while having your knowledge, what company would you go for? I would still go for like the big tech cloud companies. I think they have a ton of growth potential. But other than that, I would also look at like Series A, Series B startups that are funded by Tier 1 VCs. So if you have prior sales experience, tech sales experience, if you hop on the right VC or startup, you can make a lot of money through options. You got an MBA, can't seem to break into tech, got denied. If you have your MBA, definitely leverage that MBA alumni network. You should be, basically trying to get referrals for every position that you apply for. So I think if you do that, that's going to increase your success quite a bit. The other thing is you might need to like revamp your resume, your LinkedIn profile. Make sure it's like very well polished. The formatting is consistent. I've used like resume LinkedIn services twice in the past to kind of clean up my resume, and I think it helps a lot. What are my career goals? One of my big career goals is I do want to like run my own software startup. So I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but that's kind of like the big goal. Don't necessarily have like management goals per se, but I would like to lead like whole company, and then I think like having sales experience is really valuable for founding a startup. Good stuff, Tom. AWS 5-year vet, L7. Good advice. Yeah, thanks for hopping on. Thanks for the support. What about internal Amazon folks trying to break into AWS? Yeah, internal transfers. Your best friend is going to be definitely spending time networking with people within the org that you want to break into, and then especially like having like, informal chats with like the hiring managers. So you kind of have an advantage of being like an internal candidate because you can kind of take your time to transition into the role. You know, if it takes you a few months or half a year, it's not really that big of a deal. You're still at Amazon. Um, but you also have direct insight into like who the hiring managers are. So go ahead and like reach out to them, and then that's going to be the best advice I would say. Interview tomorrow at Databricks. Oh, good luck on the interview. Is there a question you have there? Thoughts on cold FaceTimes? Probably I wouldn't recommend it. Speaking of resume, the services you offer are done by you by someone else. Yeah, I do like very informal resume critiques. Like people might send me a picture of their resume and I'll like give them a few pointers. But I am by no means like a professional resume writer or anything like that. I don't offer anything like that. I do have like a referral link through Resume Assassin. She's pretty good. I used her twice in the past. She's also based out of Austin, Texas. So that's just one. There's plenty of them out there. I think she used to be a recruiter, and she's done a lot of like resume prep specifically for people in tech sales. So good one to check out. How can you get to almost $1 million a year? So to consistently get to $1 million a year, you basically need to join a high growth startup and then get like a bunch of stock options there, and then hope that they grow a lot. Like my friend did that at Snowflake. He joined a year before they went public, and his compensation is over $1 million a year, mostly because of the stock that he got. Did 2 years at Oracle, 1 year deep at Salesforce. Thought on the good next company and max money. So if you really want to maximize your money, look at Series A, Series B startups that are funded by Tier 1 venture capital firms like Sequoia and Excel. It's going to give you the most amount of upside with the reduced risk. So what if that stock crashes? You know, it can. Like, you know, for example, Snowflake, it has gone down quite a bit from its peak. So, you know, if it crashes, I think he might be less than $1 million a year right now. Databricks OTE. At the enterprise level, it's, from what I've heard, it's around 300 plus options. How is Fortinet? How is Fortinet on here? Yeah, they're just like one of like the top paying ones. This is sorted by like top reps. So, you know, it's not the full list. It's just kind of where I screenshotted it. Tom, can you talk about equity and tech compensation? Is that negotiable? Yeah, everything is negotiable in your offers. Usually they'll be more happy to increase your equity than like increase like your base salary, especially for a startup, because it costs them less money. Like, you know, the startups are thinking about their cash burn rates, so it's more expensive for them to give out cash than to give out equity. Went 200% to goal, didn't get a great raise this year, time to leave. Yeah, I mean, usually in sales, you're not going to get like a big raise just because you perform high. Like, you know, you're basically getting, you know, that's kind of part of the role. You get paid more commission, so that's kind of like what the raise would be. If you really want to get that bigger bump, you pretty much have to get promoted to another level internally or move up the ladder in terms of SMB, mid-market, enterprise. What resource do I use for sales methodologies? The main one is challenger sale and spin selling. How does equity work in startup if they never go public? If they never go public, you can still sell your equity on like off-market exchanges, like EquityZen, for example. You can still offload your equity. So sometimes the companies will also offer to buy back options as well. Oh, can't hear me? Hopefully that helped. I think it hopped on my Bluetooth for some reason. Oh, can you guys hear me now? Cool. Um, awesome. Yeah, I saw my AirPods connected. My AirPods didn't turn on. So I'm not sure why it said that. Are leads free in tech sales? Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be paying for them yourself. Sometimes the company will pay for leads, but it's not going to be something that you're going to pay. Best tips for new grads and SDR, BDR roles looking to get to AE ASAP. Best tips would be work very closely with your manager. Know exactly how your performance is being measured. Try to exceed all the targets that you have, and also set like a clear expectation with your manager that you do want to get promoted to that next level. And then set like a timeline, like whether that be 12 or 18 months, and then have like monthly check-ins just focusing on your career progression just to make sure you're on track there. You really need to like own your promotion. Paul, thoughts on prospecting other territories outside the US? You're a BDR assigned to LATAM. Yeah, I've heard prospecting techniques change a little bit depending on what market you're selling into. So LATAM being Latin America. I haven't prospected into those territories. I've only covered the US and then Europe for the most part. So I don't have too much advice there. Best advice: be a better presenter. I think it's one good tip would be, like, if you want to work on your public speaking skills, take a look at like Toastmasters. They're like free public speaking local groups. They have them in like most major cities. Public speaking isn't something that comes easy to a lot of people. It requires a lot of practice. Like, I still need to work on it myself. I remember when I first started off in sales, I was like super nervous about presenting in front of like a large group of individuals. Eventually you kind of like get over that a bit. I think also like with me doing a lot of like the recording, the TikTok stuff has also helped with that too. But practice pitching, in front of your friends, colleagues, record yourself. That also helps too. How's NEMA? Is it worth it? Thinking about the move. I think it's you get a lot of great perks here. The one downside is there aren't like a lot of like restaurants or anything nearby the South Loop area, so you end up like traveling further north into the city, like 1 or 2 miles to get into like River North or something like that. But other than that, like the gym's great. I do like the location being close to the Lakefront Trail and everything. Free public speaking groups, yeah. So look at Toastmasters. Toastmasters is totally free. How do you keep your mental health in check? Me personally, I think 2 things I focus on. Getting enough sleep, and then also I try to like exercise regularly and keep myself healthy. I've definitely noticed like decreases in performance, like work performance, if I don't keep up on those 2 things. So I try to prioritize that, and that helps a lot. Can you please post this? You missed it? Yeah, I'll definitely post this live on YouTube, like I post all the other lives. As long as TikTok doesn't mess up the recording. Sometimes the recordings, for some reason, get like corrupted and doesn't let me download it. So hopefully this one won't have that issue. You're in the process with the IBM brand Tech Sales Rep Summit. Not sure if it's intern or full-time. I think that's a full-time position that they have. Switch from real estate, average 250K, trying to switch to software but don't want to get massive pay cut. Advice. Yeah, so big thing would be try to like leverage your experience in real estate. So what that means is target software companies in the real estate space. There's a lot of like tech companies that are trying to that would be targeting like real estate brokers, for example. A lot of different software platforms there. So if you can like focus on those companies, then you can probably get like an AE position where you might be getting paid around 250K on target, just because you have that prior experience being in that role, being like what the target customer would be. So when did you get into tech sales? How long have you been doing it? So I graduated my undergrad in 2013. I started my first like professional role in 2014 as on the technical support side. And then I moved into sales like mid 2015. So I've been doing it like 7 years now. How much did you make year 1 in tech sales? So year 1, granted, this was back in 2014 or 2015. My on-target earnings was 67K. So it's a lot higher now. I've been a lot of my followers that I message and provide advice for. There's been a good number of people that have been getting offers for 100K, but most typically it's like 60 to 90K. as an SDR. Why am I promoting tech sales? Mostly just just creating awareness that there's all these you can work in tech without having a technical background. So me personally, I didn't have any like connections in the tech industry. Both my parents are immigrants from Poland, not college educated. So I went to like public schools, state university. I had no idea that tech paid this much. So like I feel like there's a lot of like gatekeeping within the industry, especially among like some sales reps. So I'm just big on transparency. There's more than enough for everyone that's out there. So that's the reason why. I also just enjoy like coaching and mentoring. When I was in my undergrad, we had like a online calculus department, and I mentor like 20 to 30 students at a time, and I really enjoyed that thing. You're a developer by trade? No, not really. I studied biomedical engineering, and I did like technical support. I originally thought I was going to go do medical school, decided last minute to not do that and just go into industry. Am I a manager right now or individual contributor? I am an individual contributor. How's the technical knowledge ramp up for an AWS enterprise rep? They give you like a good amount of time to ramp up, and there's but it's pretty much like all self-paced for the most part. So there's just a lot of like material for you to go through. I think they give you enough time and there's enough materials. You're also not expected to be like super technical as an account rep. You're gonna have a lot of support on your side. So how does a master's degree weigh? It doesn't. I don't think it carries like a ton of weight, but it can help get you a higher level role. Like if you're, for example, between like a level 5 and a level 6, based on your master's degree, they might offer you like a level 6 if you're like on the edge there. What do I recommend from transitioning from banking to tech? So I talked about this one. Try to leverage your background with banking background. I would probably focus on like fintech startups. Can a mechanical engineering graduate join tech sales, or is it just non-linear and possible? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I joined as a biomedical engineer. You can absolutely do it as a mechanical engineer. Is there chargebacks on commissions if a client cancels after a few months or weeks? Yeah, usually. I mean, in general, you're basically paid when the company gets paid. So you need to look at your sales plans. It'll specifically outline if you're responsible for that or not. But yeah, it can happen, and there's usually like a timeline for those chargebacks too. For LP, it's going to be life-related stories. Yeah, it doesn't have to be just work experiences. It could be personal experiences too. What's the most prestigious tech company to sell for? Personally, I think it's like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Those are kind of like the big three, in my opinion. What about fintech sales in the crypto sector specifically? I've been in crypto for a while. I don't know about like how many fintech sales positions there are. I guess there probably are some. I just don't have like a ton of experience there, so I can't really comment on that. What level AWS can an account exec with 2 years of closing experience in cloud sales aim for? I would say you probably could aim for like a level 5. They might get you in as a level 4, but I would shoot for a level 5. Does Google have remote jobs for SDRs? No, and Google's actually been requiring their employees to come back in office. Google's never been very remote friendly, so if you're looking for like a remote job, Google probably won't be a good fit. You've been working in sales for a BI company for 10 years, still making 120K. Yeah, I would say 10 years of experience, probably maybe a bit underpaid. With that experience, like if you're closing deals at the enterprise level, most companies are paying around 250K in software sales or 300K. So is there a boot camp? Yeah, there's a couple that I've partnered with. They're listed in my bio. You can check them out. They don't charge anything up front. So, and then also check out my Get Into Tech Sales playlist. I have a ton of like free advice that you can actually follow and get a position without doing those boot camps. So I recommend doing that first. See if you have any luck after like 3 or 4 weeks, and then if you still need help, that's when like a boot camp could be a good fit. Are master's degrees recommended in tech sales? I don't. So in general, I don't actually really recommend getting a master's degree unless you're getting paid to get it or your employer pays for it. So if there's one like that's the big reason why I got my MBA was I was at Google at the time and they paid for 2/3 of it, so it only cost me like $7,000 out of pocket. So for me, it was kind of like a no-brainer to go ahead and get that. But if you're like trying to evaluate, should you do an executive or night weekend MBA? Like when I was in Austin, like UT had like a executive MBA program where you can do it while you're working full time, but it was like 100K for 2 years. I don't think I would pay 100K for that. Lots of great questions. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I try to get back to everyone in a reasonable time, but it could be like a week or two just because of how many messages I have. So go ahead and do that. Feel free to comment on my videos. I try to respond to a lot of the comments on the videos too. So RepView again, like a great resource if you're trying to like pick and choose and evaluate different tech sales offers. They have a lot of great in-depth data on tech sales organizations, so it's specific for tech sales, which is great. And then, yes, go to my bio, if you want to see more information on how to get in there. But yeah, and then feel free to message me. And then I'll be reposting this on YouTube too. So the link is in my bio for the YouTube playlist with all the recorded TikTok lives. I'll do these every Wednesday. I might adjust next week, so I'll be in Seattle next week, so I'm not sure if I'll do the same time or not. But I'll have like the time slot in my description. I'll update that in the next couple weeks or next couple days. But thanks again, everyone. Hope you have a great night.